Okay, we are we're live now.
Excellent. Yeah.
So let's see. I think Chris is on the Nerdcrawler one. Hey Chris, let me know if you notice any issues or anything. But anyways,
Video hasn't shown up for me on Nerdcrawler yet, so just let you know.
okay. It should be live there. So um, welcome to another drawing night, I guess. With we have Brandon Graham, Kevin Mellon. So very excited. I'm Matt Battaglia. Yeah, we're gonna do some drawing and talk some comics, and if you want to join the Nerdcrawler stream, it's on nerdcrawler.com, and you can buy art from both these guys, books, all sorts of other stuff. So yeah, I'm excited to chat with you guys. It's I feel like Kevin, we talk on the internet, and this is our first meeting face to face. Brandon, you and I have talked a couple times we talked on this before, but always a good time chatting comics with you guys.
One, it's my first time meeting, quote unquote, both of you, because I've been talking to both of you for, in Brandon's case, off and on for, like through various social medias for years. And then Matt, you and I have been talking over social media and through some other stuff for like the last year or so. So this is actually really nice, and it's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah. Kevin, do you want to tell people, like, on the, like, especially for like the Nerdcrawler end of this, just like some of your background and stuff?
Yeah. So I started out in comics. I went to the Kubert School, graduated, of that, and then started working in comics. Put out my first graphic novel in 2007, which was called Gearhead, with Dennis Hopeless, who went on to write a bunch of stuff for Marvel. And then from there, just kind of kept putting out comics, making things. And around 2011, I got the opportunity to work on the FX cartoon Archer. For those of you who don't know, it's a spy comedy, kind of a workplace comedy, but with spies and a lot of drinking. So I was a big fan of the show even before I got the chance to work on it. I started on season 3 and then worked on it basically off and on for about the equivalent of 10 seasons up until the end with season 14. I also, in that time, storyboarded parts of America the Motion Picture, Dicktown, a couple other things, and then most recently I directed on seasons 1 and 2 of Hit Monkey for Hulu and Marvel, made by the same company that made Archer. And then some dalliances in there. I worked in live action a bit. I worked on 3 seasons of two seasons of Black Lightning, 3 seasons of Vampire Diaries, the Dynasty reboot that was a thing for a little bit. Did some stuff on that. A bunch of CW shows that were made in Atlanta I worked on for a while. And now I'll put this lightly, but the as most people have probably kind of seen, the TV and entertainment industry shit the bed. So a lot of jobs have gone away, and now I found myself in this place now where I'm back making comics and writing and drawing my own stuff and working on. I put out a couple of recent horror-based one-shots, and I'm working on follow-ups to my book Suicide Sisters. So.
Did you put Axe to Grind? Is that available for people to buy on Nerdcrawler? Do you have a couple copies?
I need to make it that available. If I can do it while we're here, then I need to figure that out. But yeah, it will be. I say at the very latest, it'll be available tomorrow, because I literally didn't think about that until right before this stream. So
that's cool. Well, I highly recommend like people coming and checking that out, because I think it's a really cool one shot and a cool experiment in comics storytelling. Like last time we did one of these, Brandon and I got deep in the bag about just storytelling in comics and all the different tricks and things that you can do. And I thought that Axe to Grind was a cool, silent book, which there was a time period to digress quickly, but I think it was in the early aughts or mid aughts where Marvel did like a whole month of silent comics. I remember there was like a Steve Dillon one, Punisher issue, which was totally silent, and I thought it was cool. Like that was a cool challenge that they gave the artist that month or something, and it was a neat little experiment, and I wish people would surt of think more silently in comics sometimes.
Right. That reminds me of something that I started thinking a lot about since we talked last night on the Nerd Caller stream is I kind of been going through this whole renaissance of trying to revitalize my kind of interest in comic book storytelling.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of it came from talking about how you slow down the reader with pages rather than what I would traditionally use, which would be detail or words in a page. And so I went through this. I've been going through old Frank Miller interviews and going through I have this big comics journal, Frank Miller.
I love that one. That's like my beach reading material.
Nice, yeah, no, friend that I need to return because he's far in another state. But for now, it's mine. But I'm reading this, and one of the things that really early Frank Miller interviews are really fascinating to read. And one of the things he talks about is his interest in reading Japanese comics that he can't read the words of, but how the storytelling works so well, like even if you don't understand it. And it's caused me to start reworking a lot of my comic storytelling to try to make it work better visually without the words.
Yeah. Well,
that's a huge thing for how I function is like, if it doesn't work without the words aren't necessarily going to make it better. You know what I mean? Because at the end of the day, it's very much like the thing about like I have this very functional view of storytelling in that like when I'm training new board artists or when I'm talking to people about how to storyboard, it's a very similar thing. But like I always say, if it works in stick figures, then it's going to work when you draw it better. If it doesn't work in stick figures or circle heads, box bodies, it's not going to work the more lines you add to it. You know what I mean? So it's like it has to work on such a functional basic level of just shapes, you know? And I feel like the lettering is a shape and it is a thing, but you have to have that core function of the picture in order to, you know, help people want to read the words and read to the next page, that sort of thing.
Well, do you guys lay out with with words sort of written in your thumbs or your layouts, like because the way that I don't have as many pages under my belt, but the way that I've done the way that I did House on Fire and the way that I'm doing my new book is I don't write like a script. I write like a little bullet point outline, and then I just draw I just lay it out, and I have like an idea of like, oh, a conversation needs to go here, but I don't I just don't even think about any dialogue whatsoever. I just draw it in the pictures. My brain has to be, the pictures have to say everything that I want the story to say without you needing to read a single word.
Oh, actually, I actually start with just text sometimes. I'm working on a short story right now for my friend James Harvey for his 10th anniversary of his name, Hydro. What the hell is the name of the book? My brain is slow today.
I have his like Kill Luigi or whatever books. I haven't read anything else of his.
He did this book for Image Comics a decade ago called Masterplasty, which is about people that kind of reform it's like extreme plastic surgery, basically.
Okay.
And he's having me do a short story for it, and it's a weird process where I do kind of stick figure layouts thing. So I'll do these like really ugly. If I can reach my pages here, I'll do these really ugly layouts that are like the simplest little drawings. Put them together like this.
Okay.
And we'll sometimes go into a Word document and type up what I think the words will be. And in this process, I lost my layouts like an idiot, but I sent him what the text was, so now I'm relaying it out based entirely off of just the text, not remembering what the pictures were.
Okay.
So it's an interesting process.
That's cool. I love just seeing I love seeing everyone's like how you guys work and how the brain. It's very cool. Like I think artists think like even just seeing your lists on your Patreon where you're like, this is what I did today. It's all visually interesting and organized in its own unique way.
Yeah,
Joe, our friend of the program, Joe Keating, has jumped into the chat. Just FYI.
Oh, excellent. Yeah, I did a thing recently on my Patreon where I posted my to-do list, and I realized I was doing math on my finances on it too, and it's kind of all I was thinking about blanking it out, and I was like, no, I mean, I guess it's kind of cool to just be like nakedly be like, I got to make $4,000 a month. This month I made $8,000. We're doing good.
I like that you left that in. And to Matt's point about talking about your Patreon, like, but even going back to your Tumblr, like, you have just had this kind of like naked honesty about your process. And so it's been interesting to see your process change over the last, who knows, however long, you know, because like one of those like interesting moments for me as a creator was like when you were just like, fuck it, I'm putting all of multiple warheads, no, not multiple warheads, but King City. All you're just like, here's the Dropbox. Who cares? You know what I mean? Because you were just like, but it's one of those things where like that was just like that part of your process though was sitting there like watching like you navigate the changing landscape of stuff.
Sure.
And I think that's interesting as far as not just as far as like how we lay out comics and how we make comics, but how we perceive our own work and its value to other people. Like, I don't know, I'm kind of meandering there and I don't really have a huge point, but like there was just kind of like there's kind of the way we're talking about like layouts and the way I feel about layouts and stuff right now is like, yeah, I have all these like hard opinions, but those are hard opinions for me. They're very soft for other people. Yeah. And it's like a lot of people would sit there and be like, don't give away your work. And you're like, fuck it, here it is. You know?
Yeah, well, it's a weird animal in a lot of ways where like, I handle things very like sometimes I'll go back and read my old things to kind of, you know, like if I'm working on something and be like, oh, I wrote about this before, let me go check it out. And I'm kind of surprised when I read back like 10 or 15 years, I said things. There's a point where I posted a comic I did for DC came out, and I did a blog post that was basically like, this comic kind of sucks. I don't recommend you guys buying it. And I was like, that is the same thing to do. Like, I would like, why would someone hire me if there was the option that I was like, oh, these guys? And now it's like I'm more particular about kind of the work I do in different ways. Like back then I was really like I wanted to be very naked and be like very aggressive about stuff. And now I'm like, I'm not really publicly angry because I mean, part of it is I don't care. Like comics as an industry could suck my dick, you know?
Yeah.
And I'm just kind of like, I don't really, like, I don't need friends or enemies and publishers. You know, I have people that I like and people I work with, but I want to be, it's funny, I'm swearing and I'm like, but I want to be vaguely professional as I close. You know, on my own.
I was going to say, this is a family show, Brandon.
Oh, sorry.
It's not. I don't think it is.
No, I was remembering last time we did the Nerdcaller thing, and I was just talking about how I like burnt out on superhero comics, and I was like, Nerdcaller is like a superhero comic based thing. What am I doing? But as I'm redrawing Dark
that's a really good. That's a good point though, because like it's one of those things where like yeah, like that might be like the majority of the audience that is like buying and doing stuff, but I don't feel like they don't want something different. It's just they have to be provided something different, and they have to be provided that something different in a way that is accessible. And I think that's the tough part that we struggle with as indie creators is like, how do we get the people to, you know, that because they love capes and tights and stuff like that, but they also love Westerns. They love, you know, sci-fi. They love romance. They like all these things. They watch all these kinds of movies, read these kinds of books. So I think it's a matter of like, you know, as Chris is saying in the chat right now, it's like you get them in the door and then you show them these other things. So, but that's the thing is like, I don't know. Anyways, I'll stop.
No, it's true. I just need to shout out our friend, Chris and I's friend Shane, who we also worked with at Comixology, who Brandon, big fan of yours, and had a couple of pieces from you, I think, at the time, just jumped into the chat. So I got to shout out our friend Shane.
What up, Shane?
He was like when we worked at Comixology, I think, I can't remember what book of yours was coming out at the time.
Probably Profit around then.
It probably had to be. But he liked he definitely was a big multiple warheads guy. He said, Brandon, you gave him a storyboard from Adventure Time at Emerald City a very, very long time ago.
Oh, cool. That was a fun thing. I've gotten so much traction off of working on the one episode of Adventure Time. I've got other people outside of comics.
Actually,
Oh yeah.
Just to refresh my memory, you got to that's if I remember right, that's a board driven show. So you got to basically write the episode, right?
Yeah, they gave you a plot, and they had me teamed up with with Jesse Moynihan,
Okay.
another cartoonist who worked on a lot of Adventure Time episodes, and he really, like, basically I did the boards for the beginning and end of the show, and he did the middle, and he's a really impressive writer, and he managed to kind of like I was just focused on jokes, and he added so much like heart to it that I was really impressed by.
Oh, that's awesome. Did
Yeah,
that
yeah.
inform kind of like how anything that you did after, like your process at all, or?
A little bit. I mean, just studying Adventure Time was really interesting. Like Tom Herpick, one of my old friends from New York, he was one of the main storyboarders on it. Him and Steve Wolfhard worked a ton on it, and like most of his work that is available is Adventure Time. So I've studied a ton of. Actually, I have within reach here some Tom Herpick books. So he did.
I think I know that name because of you. Like that's why. But Jesse Moynihan though has done a couple other things because I know that name from.
Yeah, I think Forming was his big series, if I'm remembering right. I remember.
That sounds right.
Good sketches in the fronts of these things.
Oh, that's awesome.
But yeah, Tom is like.
That's a really great cover.
Yeah, he's so like. This is a comic I go back to a lot, and it's this thing. It just has 4 little pictures in it that repeat. And I love this idea where it says like your guts are like this as a clenched hand, and it says do this and shows the hand open, and then later it has blank panels that say do this, and I like that as training the reader for words and to align words and pictures in a really unique way.
Yeah, that's really cool.
Yeah, Tom does all this fantastic stuff. This one with 2 people sitting here, both looking at the telephone, thinking, "Come on," like waiting for them.
It's not quite the same, but Jesse Lonergan does a lot of these like 20 panels per page, and it's all various bits of information.
Yeah,
that's kind of what that looks like to me. And like Jesse's work, while different, there's kind of a years ago. Warren Ellis, and I haven't been able to find it since, but Warren Ellis did this talk or this writing thing where he talked about like comics as idea containers.
Sure.
And I think like Jesse's one of those ones who's doing like the maximalization of that, of like, he's not just doing like, each page is an idea. He's doing like each panel is its own unique idea, and there's 20 of them, that sort of thing.
I really like his work from like just the mechanics of story and stuff. It's very creative with how he uses the medium.
Yeah, very much so.
I think he unfortunately, like there's guys who I think that are like artists who are very much like, oh, this is like you need a PhD in comics reading to really like dig this stuff. And like a friend of mine just started reading Ronin, and I'm like, I think he's a little lost in it, and I was trying to explain to him what I got, like why I love Ronin, and you realize like, well, the story is very little to do with that. Like, there's, I'm like, like you have to understand its place in comics history and like sort of all the new things that he was doing at the time, and
sure.
And also like all the art experimentation that he's doing, and then you realize, well, I'm not really selling you on this book being good, am I? Like, I'm just telling you why it's important, but I can't really explain to you, beyond the, like for just a general reader, like I don't know, there's some books that I feel like, kind of are like you have to really love the art form to super get into them.
Sure, and I might be wrong about this, but I reread the first issue of Ronin last night, and at this point, not only reading the first issue recently again, I think that Ronin, like the first issue, is like the peak of Ronin, and it exists off the promise of what might happen versus the reality of what he actually did.
Yeah,
if you're story-wise, yes. Story-wise, I agree with that. I think that first issue is a lot like Dark Knight Returns, in that it's him learning how to tell that story, and then the rest of it is not even how to tell the story, but how to draw that story. And then the rest of it is him going apeshit because like Dark Knight Returns, you got the first issue, second issue, it's like Jansen inking him, kind of reining things in, and then by issue 3 and 4, it's just unhinged Frank inking himself, you know, like, and that's kind of what I love. That's honestly why Ronan's one of my favorite books of his, is because like, yeah, the story is batshit and makes almost no sense, I don't think, but like you look at it and you're just watching this descent into not madness but creativity, I guess, you know.
Yeah. And it's weird how there's elements of it that almost feel like fan fiction of things. You like,
Yes, yeah.
Child that shows up in issue 1 is just the lone wolf and cub kid.
Right.
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's interesting too. One of the things I got from the old Frank Miller interviews is when he decided to take on a lot of the like ninja samurai stuff, and I'm kind of like, in my mind as a kid, like Frank Miller was like patient zero for bringing that stuff to the West. So I'd be interested in like where it actually came from. If it was all just like movies, you know, like the slow trickle of Kurosawa movies making it over and becoming more popular or something by the 80s.
Well, didn't he just find Willem Wolf?
But I mean, I think that's
that
older.
basically?
I think is you do autopsies on all this stuff that you just kind of took for granted when you were younger.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, that's a really good way to put it. Like, a friend of mine tends to talk about things in terms of litigating it, and like, but autopsy is much better as far as when it comes to talking about this. Like, sometimes I find myself litigating the past, which works when you're having a weird, like, you know, moment of going over past relationships or whatever. But when you're talking about like the things that we grew up loving as kids, like an autopsy of what we liked about it. Like, I've been doing that a lot with Liefeld, like, because like, and you know, and I recently met Stephen Platt for the first time. I did a panel with him.
Splat.
Super awesome dude. Like, he's the best. He's amazing. But I'd been, even before I'd been asked to do a panel with him, I'd been rebuying a bunch of old Stephen Platt stuff, like Soulfire and, you know, all that, just to be like, sit there and Yumi and Matt and Joe Keating have talked about this ad nauseum, but like, you know, it's just like that excitement that we're trying to like replace. Like, part of it is like that autopsy that you're doing is sitting there going like, oh, because we had unbridled joy because everything was new, you know.
Yeah.
We weren't jaded, you know, 40-something assholes, you know.
I feel like I'm getting less jaded. Like, it's funny, in the 90s, like all of that Image stuff I had despised. Like, when I was peak, like, loving it, because I was reading like Antarctic Press Texas manga and everything, and then the older I've gotten, the more I've just kind of seen the joy that those guys were having. Like, you know, I mean, especially like Stephen Platt, and like Dan Panosian's a really interesting person to look, because he was like in that thing, and he's become a totally different style of artist now. But you can see the excitement in all the different eras of his work. And working for Liefeld and getting to know the guy a little bit really changed my opinion of him as a person. I mean, he's a weird dude.
I didn't even think about that. Sidebar, Dan was also on the panel that I did, and I had never met him either before either. And just a dude that exudes enthusiasm. Like, I was like, you are having fun all the time. If you're ever having a sad day, I don't want to hear about it, because anyways.
He's such an impressive artist, and like, I feel like he should be like, he's one of those people that like, I would be comfortable with him representing comics, you know. Like,
his art.
Put this guy out there. He's a functional human being.
Is he one of those guys though,
It's
where
interesting.
he doesn't have like that like masterpiece book? Sorry. Like, Panosian doesn't have like a book where you're like, oh,
you
this
said
is
that working
the
with Rob kind of changed your opinion of him. Like, did it humanize him for you? Is that what happened there?
Oh yeah, no, I think that's a huge part of it. Is like, he's aware of his reputation and how, you know, I would often describe him to people outside of comics as the Vanilla Ice of comics. Like, very popular, but kind of like the butt of a lot of jokes and things. What I really got out of it is like, he doesn't have to do comics, and he chooses to, and having that thing about like, knowing that there's going to be like basically just like kind of standing up against the storm of bullshit and being like, I'm going to still do this because I enjoy doing it, is something I really took a lot from. Because, you know, I think the comics industry is not healthy place to spend your life, in a lot of ways. Like, there's great people in comics, but like there are some of the like something I always contrast it with. Like, I live in Las Vegas, and a huge amount of my friend group are in porn here, and porn is so much less gross than comic books. People get, I mean, not across the board. Like, there's nightmare scenarios too, but like the culture of it is less poisonous in a lot of ways, and that often really surprises me.
That's interesting. And like I think, all right, this is gonna be like a weird way to put this, but I think it's because most people don't get into porn because they're fans, whereas a lot of people get into comics because they're fans. You know,
I think that's entirely it. I think the fandom of comics and the personal ownership over it can be a beautiful thing. You can be like, I love it when, like, reading Paul Pope's art book, and he talks about himself as a lifer. Like, that was a really cool way to put it.
Yeah.
But it's like we all take it so personally that, if somebody's in an industry they went in because they thought they could do it, or they had an into it, it's a totally different animal than somebody being like, this is who I am. If you try to take this from me, I'll cut your throat.
Yeah, I mean, and I watched a lot of people. It was interesting because, like, COVID changed a lot of publishing plans and the and all that stuff. And I watched a lot of people navigate like their identity crisis, copyright DC, of like trying to navigate who they were if they weren't making these books anymore, if they weren't doing this job anymore. And it did not, even though I watched it happen, it did not prepare me for me going through the same thing recently, which is like the TV industry shit the bed, and like there's less stuff being made, less stuff being greenlit. All the projects that I was supposed to do after Hitmonkey just went away during the writers and actors strikes, and there's still around a 60 to 70% unemployment across the entertainment industry in general because of all that stuff, because of everything, And what I wasn't ready for was I wasn't ready for the last year and a half of like, oh God, who am I without this? Like having to kind of refigure out who I am in my mid 40s, like out of this weird identity. It's like, because you do after a time of doing something for so long, that's who you are rather than just being something you do.
Yeah, very
at
much.
Least,
yeah. No, I mean, I think being away from, like, in the last decade, I feel like I've learned to be a person outside of comics in a way that's really helped me.
I think that's important.
I feel like the thing is,
and Matt's sitting here going like, "Oh, Matt, I don't know if your audio's on. I can't hear you."
You can't hear me? Hold on.
Unless you can hear me now, Brandon. There you are. Yeah.
Okay. I was gonna say, I think that the creative industries, just because of the amount of like life that you pour into that's what breaks down that like personal definition barrier. Like it's very hard to not end up pouring a lot of yourself worth into the things that you make, which is tough. Like, you don't do that with any, like, my wife doesn't, she's in insurance. She doesn't, that doesn't define her personality. It's not like, she's not up at 9 o'clock at night on I gotta jump onto this insurance, talk insurance on a live stream. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Oh, but we have, in the Nerdcrawler chat, we have a, Frank, I can't tell when it turns into his last name, but he's talking about, he says he's heard mangaka talking about considering word balloons as another visual element of the page, and that's the reason behind the balloon being the most important thing at a panel when something important is being said, among other things. And I think that's sort of why I kind of I think that they were talking about this on Ink Pulp recently with Jake Parker, where like that's the where you kind of, one, you have to plan around word balloons, which yes, but two, like that people can just end up scanning the word balloons and reading, like, and that's why I think that's that's an academic reason for why I feel like pages is better for slowing readers than like panels, because some people just read where they just, you know, balloon, and the pictures are sort of just background almost, and you know the eye takes it all in, but they're not like, you know, just because you put a lot of detail into one panel, they're not necessarily getting lost within that one panel. They're sort of taking the page in as one big picture and then reading the balloons.
Yeah, I do that, so I get it. Sorry.
Yeah.
I was going to say that there's different ways to read comics too. Like I've noticed that sometimes I'll be reading a book and enjoying it okay, and I'll just, like, especially if it's like a mainstream superhero book, sometimes I'll just skip balloons. Be like, I get it.
I was reading. I was flipping through P City Parade the other night. This one.
Oh, that's a fun one. It's nice to see it not as beat to hell as my copy.
Yeah.
I think I have mine here actually, just to be.
Oh wow, yeah, yours is beat to shit. I found myself like I had to stop. Like I found myself falling into the rhythm of going balloon to balloon, and I was like, no, I had to like consciously stop myself and be like, no, look at the pictures, damn it.
This is something that I really value about this era of Paul Pope stuff that I feel like is something I've been thinking more about, if it's something I want to incorporate in my kind of current work. Is he had this interesting thing he was doing a lot back then, where he would publish things that he would announce were not done or were failures. So like this is a story that doesn't end, and it has chunks that are just like, he'll just have a section here where we'll be like, this scene happens about 50 pages later, and those 50 pages never existed in print. Like they might have gone, or it might have just been he skipped ahead. And one of my favorite comics of his is that Smoke Navigator that was in BuzzBuzz that eventually got reworked to being 100%. And the intro for that, he says, this comic is a failure, but I wanted to at least show what it was. And it all creates this feeling of like you're learning with Pope as he's learning to be a cartoonist. And I feel like by the time he got to Vertigo, there was this kind of marked change of, it felt like he had graduated and he was presenting his work as like, this is the finished stuff now. And I feel like as artists, we kind of like, you know, it never gets easy and you never stop learning. So it'd be cool to have more of that. And so I was thinking like how I want to present, maybe, I mean, I don't do a lot of false starts in comics. I have this kind of attitude of like, you know, page 10, I don't like it. Let's try to make page 11 better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and the other interesting thing with that, that era of Pope is all of his essays about, like, because he's not only, you're seeing it in his work as he's growing, but you're also like, he's fully open about what he's reading and what he's learning and like the influences that he's taking in and all of that stuff. And so you're getting this whole education about how he's figuring out how to do comics, and that's really cool to me, I think. Like I feel like I've learned a lot since finally tracking down a bunch of these and reading them.
Right. Oh, that's something kind of on my. I should set out more specifics on this kind of thing I've been talking about kind of like going through your work, Matt, and Frank Miller's work, and also like Alfred Hitchcock and all this stuff, and trying to think about comics slightly differently. Is one of the things that I pulled out of an early Frank Miller interviews. He was talking about how important it was to take things outside of comics and rework them into comics.
Yeah.
And I found a couple fine artists whose work I thought was interesting. There's this guy named I'll screw up their names if I try to remember them, but there's two fine artists, or one was kind of this guy that he did like stuff for Beyonce and Grimes, and unfortunately killed himself recently. Newsy Cuervo, I think his name was, but he did this like, he would do these 3D printed kind of like spaceship lingerie. And he would do these things that are like these chin things that had these, they look like it was like a tongue, but it grew off people's chins, and they'd wear like a chin strap. Really weird, like sexual imagery. And then there's this woman who did this series of fine art things. She did this thing called Continental Breakfast. and it is this weird chair that looks like a mix between a dentist chair and a I posted about this stuff on my last Patreon post, but she has this thing that's like a weird mix between a dentist chair and like an airline seat that's made for these model women to come in and basically like put their faces down and their asses up in the air, and it's just this highly weird sexual thing, and it's her weird fine art, and she would set it up in a gallery and have a bunch of people that go into galleries all crowd around, and then have these like very stoic women come in and get into these weird dental sex chairs. And the combination of those two artists, I kept thinking like there's a subversion to doing highly sexualized art now, because I think so much media has really tampered that down more so in recent years, for good and ill results. Mm-hmm. I think that they make work more inclusive, but it also makes things feel more neutered oftentimes. Yeah. And so I've been trying to pull from that art and put it into my art, and I feel like I'm trying to get more comfortable. This is a weird thing to say because I feel like one of my reputations as an artist is drawing highly sexual stuff, but I'm trying to be more kind of grow with it, I guess, and do new types of work and figure out why it's appealing to me past just libido reasons,
Brandon, you can only draw so many angles of a butthole, but it's still a butthole.
He gets so good at it, just like
he's trying to draw every possible angle.
Right. Yeah. Well, I mean, I in the new, I think I've sent this to you guys individually, but like in the new issue of Suicide Sisters I'm doing, I was drawing like there's a weird occult sex scene in it, like, and I was like, all right, I'm just gonna do the thing, and I made a choice as to what angles to use.
Oh, right.
I'm like, maybe this isn't the best choice for the reader, but for me, like I was like, all right, this is what it is. This is what it has to be. So, I'm going to find out one way or another.
I think that's going around because I know I shared, I think I shared the like recent pages for the book that I'm working on, and it's gone into a very bizarre, weird, evil, I don't know, sexual.
No, I love it, and I know the audience doesn't know what we're talking about, but I think it's fantastic, and I think
you're contemplating basically if you're going to do a scene and not show nudity or show it. And maybe there's a realization recently where like kids don't read comics anymore. Like kids read manga and they read Dogman, but if you're doing comics, you're kickstarting, it's a bunch of 35-year-olds.
Yeah, like, well, I was
some
just
freedom.
I just I just texted Sean. I was like, "Hey, I mean, is this too far?" And he was like, "No, you can do that." I was like, "Okay."
Yeah, I used to do tests back in the day. Like when I did adult comics for a while, pornographic comics, we'll say, and because I was me and I was an angry kid and I've calmed down a lot, I would try to see what I get away with. And there's a panel in the first Multiple Warheads where I put an airplane crashing into the World Trade Center as a speech balloon to show that someone was upset in a porn comic. And I grew up with the idea that there was no way that the publisher would allow it, and they would just immediately call me up and be like, "Nope, take it out." And it has been repeated in at least 4 different languages by 2 different publishers. It's in the Image edition of Multiple Warheads Volume 1.
Uh-huh.
I saw someone on Twitter like a decade ago try to get me in trouble for it, and I feel like nobody cared. But
yeah,
there's a weird element of like you can get away with anything. I think that the joke I always tell people, and they're like, "I'm gonna get in trouble for drawing this," and I'm always like, people that try to censor work, they only look at covers. They're not gonna open your book. Don't worry.
Well, I my like goal with this book was to go as European as possible, and I feel like lots of nudity is very that says you can't get more European than that.
Yeah, Europeans are naked all the time.
I mean, we were talking about like Hugo Pratt and Manera last time, and like I don't think I brought up Indian Summer, but like Hugo Pratt just like he's like, "Oh, I'm writing from Manera. Let me get every perverted idea I had." And
what is that? like it's a weird, like I'll contrast it. You ever read the Chris Claremont written X-Men book that Manara did?
No.
It's kind of atrocious. like I love Manara, but it feels like him and Claremont are fighting as they work together, because Claremont's doing soap opera writing, and then Manara is just like, there's a bunch of babes all in bikinis, they're dancing. And it's beautifully drawn. It has a lot of words, but I feel like Pratt and Manara were both doing almost the opposite thing when they worked together, where Manara had this huge reverence for Pratt, so his work that they did together on Indian Summer and the
I don't know that I've seen the other one that they did.
El Gaucho, got it right here. It's beautiful. Like it's fantastic work, but it's so much more sexually upsetting than I'll say most of Manara's personal work and all of other work.
Yeah.
And it's really weird. Like the Indian Summer, like incest, and like there's a kid who's just pantomiming masturbating on like
the whole time.
Yeah, the whole time. It's just like, it's a lot. It's like, it's like, chill out, please.
And Pratt like investigates a lot of that.
With my other headphones, so I had to put on a different one. So I missed a lot of what you said, unfortunately. But I was watching you flip through this, and like, I need this book.
Oh.
Like, what can I show of this?
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
Well, but like he explores that whole time period in Wheeling, which never kind of goes.
Yeah, I mean, this is. I missed a little bit what you said, so I apologize if this is off topic or whatever. But like, part of the stuff, like with doing like the new Suicide Sister stuff, is like I did volume 1, like 8 or 9 years ago, and it was me learning how to write, me learning how to kind of do all this pacing stuff that we're talking about, because I'm doing these pages of like girls driving across Texas on their motorcycles, and it's like silent stuff, and really hoping that the audience that wants to be in on that stuff. But then also with the new stuff I'm working on, I'm sitting there going like, okay, like I'm just not weird enough. Like it's not weird enough. It's not strange enough. It's not pushing like the boundaries of if I'm uncomfortable making it, then that's where I want to be. But also I don't want to sit there and like ostracize myself. But it's like I'm saying like this, like my whole note while making this new Suicide Sister stuff has been, make it fucking weird. Get weirder. If you think this is weird, there's probably a level beyond that is weirder,
I like that as kind of an edict. And I'm looking through this Jose Munoz, Carlos Sampaio stuff. It's so cool and weird.
Alex Sinner?
I need to look at more. That's the thing that you're really good about, and I feel like Matt is too, is looking at European stuff, and I just don't. And those dudes get weird,
Well, is Joe's Bar part of the Sinner stuff, or is that a simple?
Yeah. It's basically like it's the bar that Alex Sinner goes to all the time. And
but
so
is
this
that
is
a different collection, or is that also Alex Sinner book? Like, is that in the Alex Sinner?
I don't know if he is frozen, but I feel like Matt is frozen on my side. So.
Oh yeah, I got Matt moving, but.
Can you hear me though?
Probably just me. Then.
It just drops out occasionally in this in the other thing that we're in. Can you guys hear me again still?
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know if it's because there's a big collections that came out recently, and I don't know where I put my copies of those, but I don't know if the Joe's Bar is in that, because this is the old Catalan Communications edition.
I found like the late period Sinner stuff gets so abstract, which I think is really cool.
Yeah.
It's so that that looks sort of more in the late period to me. Yeah,
the early stuff in Sinner is like really kind of standard. These guys are really interesting too, just that they're Argentinian cartoonists that kind of escaped when the politics in Argentina went worse than I think they were pretty rough for a while, but they got bad enough that these guys had to leave. I know there's a comic book writer who got disappeared by the government at some point.
Now, was that?
That's wild.
Was that? Was that?
Like the fact that like Sorry, I'm trying to rehook up my computer. I'm having some
Was
camera
that
issues here.
was that
The
the guy
fact that
who
like a
did
government would disappear like a cartoonist is always strange to me. Like that's why it was weird when like the Hebdo stuff was going on, and I guess there's stuff going on now over in France. I don't know. I can't. I don't want to speak on it because I'm kind of a dummy about it.
on
Yeah,
the
I was
Argentinian.
just researching that.
Is that the guy who wrote this one, Paramus?
I'm not sure if that's because the one I'm thinking of has a cover of a guy in like a snorkeling mask.
Oh, it's the
Okay.
Eternaut guy.
I
Ethernaut,
don't
yeah.
know that sounds familiar to me.
It's,
Yeah.
Yeah.
the
As far as the
poster
France
holds
stuff
it.
now, I know Bastien Vives is kind of getting dragged. Like he was getting dragged through for his Petit Paul, which, if you guys will excuse me to be obnoxious, here's my copy of Petit Paul.
Nice.
With the sticker over the kid's dick. So he got in trouble for this book, which is ridiculous because this is like, it's just jokes. Like it's really like beautifully drawn. Like oh no, this kid has got a giant dick, you know. And I feel like France, at least my impression, because there's that happened, and then I think some Bernays stuff got censored in the Charlotte magazine, if I remember right. And basically, my impression is, at least my uneducated American impression, is that France is going through a larger version of what America went through in the past decade in comics, which I think made the craft of comics kind of dump in the toilet in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's What were you
Oh,
going to say?
this is the old Becky Cloonan sketch that I just had in a box, which is cool. Cyborg X.
She was a big inspiration for me to do the one shots that I've been doing, because she did those couple of like ashcan sized one shots like back in the day.
Yeah.
And I'd already had the idea to do them, and I was just, but I lacked the conviction at the time to feel like it was worth doing. And then she did hers, and it was like, oh yes, this makes sense. Like, and I'm nowhere near as talented or popular, but like I was like, all right, you can do black and white, you can do horror themed things, and there are people there that like, you know, that will want that, you know. So.
Sure, yeah.
Anyways, yeah, as far as the, go ahead, sorry.
I was going to say, it's my kind of motivation oftentimes is I'm trying to think like, what would I be most excited to see right now? What do I want to read the most? Even to the point where like going to a bookstore and like being like, what kind of book am I looking for? And then not finding it and going home and being like, all right, how do I try to make that? And even if you fail, it's a interesting attempt to try to do that.
Yeah, I don't know how you have revisited your old work, but as I age, you know, less gracefully year on year, but I revisit old stuff and I hate it less. And I sit there and I go like, oh God, why don't I do this anymore? But then I also realize that, like, you know, in our chats in our message board that we're on, stuff like that, I'm always like harping on like clarity and all this other stuff. And like, I made messy comics before, and I made stuff that didn't make sense all the time. And it wasn't, and I look at it now and I go, it's not that I needed rules then, it's that I need that sort of chaos now.
Interesting.
Like,
yeah,
I don't know, but it's also, yeah, sorry, man.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. My recent epiphany that I realized is kind of tangentially related, I think, is the other day I realized, like, I don't think I'm as good of an artist as I used to think 10 or 15 years ago, but I draw better now.
Okay.
Which is a weird realization.
Yeah.
Man, I thought I was the shit, and now I draw better, and I think I'm like, I'm okay, you know?
No, I relate to that like super hardcore, because like the thing about storyboarding for over a decade is you get really fast at making every single decision because there's no time not to, you know what I mean?
Sure.
So like, you have to have a level of informed confidence and a little bit of like, fuck it, this is what it is, because it's got to go out the door, you know?
Totally.
And I know that's how the comics are made, but it's like I don't know, like, I'm sitting there now like trying to make decisions based on like, okay, like I understand the formal things that I'm trying to do here, and I understand like the quote unquote rules and stuff like that. And I harp on clarity and geography and all that, but then at the end of the day, like I do sit there and go like, you know what, sometimes you just need to do something because it just looks badass, you know?
Well, and the rule of thirds. That's the or not thirds. I'm sorry, the 180-degree rule. That's.
Oh, right. I'm always harping against that because I just don't think it applies to comics, but it kind of applies to comics.
It does.
Is Matt talking? Because I can't.
I am. I'm talking about the 180. Why can't you ever hear me? Let's see if I can do.
It'd be a good passive aggressive trick too. If you're hearing Matt, you disagreed with him, and you're like, I don't hear a word you're saying, dude.
I know, it's weird. I can't hear Matt, and I don't know why.
Can you hear me better now?
Everybody else can hear Matt but me.
I know. All right. Let's see. How about now? Can you hear me better? Do you have me muted or something?
Are you mad at him?
Yeah.
I am. I'm mad at Matt. It's
I think it's just in our like little like.
Yeah, he's frozen for me. Like, so that's so strange.
Oh, I wonder if you watched it on if you watched it on the Nerdcrawler thing. If you were.
Yeah, but then you'd lag.
Oh yeah.
You could hit like maybe a refresh or something.
So weird. Okay.
I could repeat what Matt is saying.
The dude can't even tell.
That would be the worst.
Let's see.
I'm looking at the Klaus Janson inks on this Miller thing I'm kind of redrawing, and the like crazy. This looks like when Mahfoud has his like he has this like now.
I'm still here. I'm still listening.
Okay, it looks like when Mahfoud.
Hey, there you are.
Okay.
Pen that he uses that looks like he's inking with a chisel.
Yeah.
Well, because really, isn't he inking with it? I mean, I just talked to him the other day, and I should have asked him questions about what he's doing. Because he's here in Kansas City now, so I ran into him randomly. The studio here that I have is below an art gallery, so he was at the art gallery for a showing. Isn't he using though like a chisel pen? What do they call them?
These. I think I have one. Hold on, I'll pull it out. It's
Yeah, you know what I'm talking about. I use them for lettering because they're great for that.
Oh, interesting.
It's got to be.
Yeah, because it's like just. I mean, Matt will show us, but it's just like
that is exactly it. Yeah. Yep. That's it. Yeah.
They are impossible to use.
Right, but Jim's.
But I love fucking with them though because they're like because you get this weird thing that is unpredictable at times and yeah.
They're fun.
Totally.
I like Daniel Warren Johnson is using that a lot for those the Transformers stuff, which I think is interesting too.
Oh, interesting. He has such a kind of clean line. I'd be interested in seeing how he applies it.
It's interesting that you think he has a clean line because I feel like he's super messy.
Yeah, I wonder. I feel like me and Daniel kind of come from the same influences in some ways.
Yeah, that I can see. That I definitely can see. I think he's just gone the kind of more like Akira kind of thing. Like just and I say this lovingly, but a sloppier Akira.
Yeah. I mean, Otomo draws comics like an architect, so it's all pretty.
But also, you come from that thing as well, but you're taking it this more like Line Claire kind of thing. Like you're more kind of French, BD influence, whereas I think Daniel just got in the trenches of like, all right, like my brush pen is running out of ink, but I'm using it anyways.
Yeah.
Totally, yeah. I think we were talking before about I at some point I want to try to do a comic in brush, and I think that there's elements of the kind of Line Claire stuff I want to try to not feel caged in by.
Dude, I want to see it. I was looking through. I don't know if we were talking a little bit about it, but I was looking through like kid drawings of mine, like olds. Actually, Kevin, like a couple miles from when you're in the Kubert school, I was in my parents' basement using a lot of microns, and I wish someone smacked me and gave me a brush. I blame Fernando, I think, but
Fernando.
I don't know. I was like I feel like I wasted a lot of time in my youth with like tools that I've since not disowned, but like that just don't work for me anymore. I just I'm
Mhm.
not
Yeah.
careful enough of an artist to be kind of messing around with pens and stuff.
So I'll tell a quick story that I tell to a lot of people because there's a couple things that is why it's works. But when I was about 12ish, I went to a convention here in Kansas City, and Phil Hester was there, and he was, fresh out of college, bright faced, young, ready to take on the world. Phil Hester, he had just done this book called Rust. But I had drawn all these comics pages on poster board and inking them with various Sharpies because I had no idea, I just was trying to make comics. I was writing and drawing, I was making comics, right? And I show these to Phil, and he's like, right idea, wrong tools. And he immediately, like, he takes his sketchbook, his sketch pad that he's got, and he's like, does your mom go to Hobby Lobby? And I'm like, yeah. And he's like, all right, have her go here, and he tears off the pertinent part of the sketchbook cover where it tells you what kind of paper it is and all that. He's like, have her buy you this. You need better paper. And then he hands me his brush pen that he's using, and he's like, all right, these are also available at Hobby Lobby. Use this. You know what I mean? Like, and that in the A, that's just who Phil is, but also that informed who I would become because I do the same thing with people now. It's like and it informed like, oh, there's a process to this, there are tools for this, and like I just didn't have access to that. And so that set me on like finding like David Anthony Kraft's like comics interview, and I would find comics interviews and I would read and people would talk about tools, and like I was and am a big Cerebus fan, and like started reading Cerebus, and Dave's sitting there, what became the Cerebus Guide to Self-Publishing, he did in the comic for a while, where it was just like, here's how you test a nib, here's how you test a blah blah blah, and he wasn't a brush guy, so he talked a lot about pens and nibs and all that. And it's like that kind of like rewrote how I thought about not rewrote, but just wrote how I thought about tools and finding tools and stuff like that. And like,
Right.
it just became this like lifelong obsession now where like even digitally I'm obsessed with like finding new tools and stuff like that. I'm always,
That's so much.
Yeah.
Yeah, my version of that was Antarctic Press, where Ben Dunn was publishing, like, if you want to do a Ninja High School swimsuit issue, this is the way it's done in here.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
And I mean, in their way, Ben Dunn and Dave Sim are both kind of mastered different styles of comics in their own way. But it's interesting to that Cerebus Guide to Self-Publishing is strange to read now.
Yeah. It is, especially if you read the updated one. I don't swear by the updated one. I always buy and I will give people the original like one that came out in the late 90s.
Okay,
the
that's
updated one has all this. Say again.
Oh, the updated one's like, if you're jack into the web, cyberpunk, get your fax machine ready.
Yep, exactly. Whereas the original one is just very no nonsense materials and like how yeah.
Right. Have you guys read The Strange Death of Alex Raymond?
Yeah. I mean,
yes.
Yeah.
Matt, I feel like you're speaking my language with your like,
I was with it, and then like I've said this to Carson. I'm like, I don't know how the hell you tried to tie that together, because
it's impressive.
Yeah. My brain like melted once he started bringing up that one actress, and I'm like, I was going down Wikipedia holes trying to figure out who the hell he's talking about, and you just get lost in the sauce of that book. I mean, it's a really impressive book from a visual standpoint, and I think that all the beginning stuff with him talking about the different cartoonists is very interesting. But then once he gets into his, I don't know, once he gets deep in his bag, I got very confused. And then Carson's trying to clean up, like, to like do it. I don't know, I'm mixing metaphors, but like he's trying to clean it up, and it's like, I don't know how you do that, dude.
Yeah, it's fascinating. I feel like it's something that helps a lot to, I guess, kind of backing up a little bit. Something I really enjoy about reading like Scott McCloud's work on comics and Will Eisner's work on comics is taking these guys that are like, exceptionally good, especially Eisner's like fantastic, and trying to read through their how-to things and figure out what you disagree with. is really interesting.
That's a good way to put it. Figuring out what you disagree with is a really good way to put a lot of that.
And the Strange of Alex Raymond, what I really was fascinated by is what I think I started talking about it because I was thinking about when he was talking about how he figured out Alex Raymond's brush techniques is my favorite parts of the book. Like how he's like figuring out how he gets a point by rolling the brush on the page, and how figuring out how he was so fast while also having this really big life outside of just being a cartoonist. And a big epiphany for me. What were we saying?
Go ahead.
No, I was going to say a big epiphany for me in reading it was just the idea of like comic books didn't start, or like my impression always was the comics grew out of like superhero comics. And I think the realization in reading those is that a lot of the superhero comics and a lot of the reasons why they were so, why it was such a Jewish scene is that the newspaper mainstream comics kind of weren't letting those guys in, but you also had this like whole other brilliant like Milton Caniff, Alex Raymond, Hal Foster thing that was happening, and kind of a larger scale that comic book comics kind of don't talk about as much.
Yeah, well, it's funny because like the Milton Caniff, like the entire European Italian school that we talk about is all an offshoot of Milton Caniff, and
and he was kind of the missing link in understanding Paul Pope's art for me.
Yeah.
Oh, that's interesting. I would not have made that connection, but that does make sense. That like kind of lights up something in me. Yeah.
Well,
wow. Okay.
Let's see if I have one right here. There's. I do. These they've reprinted. You can find these like War Picture Library Hugo Pratt.
Oh, that's cool.
Mm-hmm.
And this is the most blatant, like, Caniff Pratt.
Oh, very much. Okay. Looks like that from here.
Like, this is very early Pratt, and it's just totally Caniff. I mean, he is.
Oh, that's interesting. You'll have to send me the link. Send me the link for what that book is, because
they're like not.
Not right.
They're not great reads necessarily. I don't think.
No. Yeah. Well, that's kind of like when you talk about Toth,
and
a lot of his stuff isn't great reads, but it's like visually phenomenal.
Yeah.
You know?
I mean the reproduction in it is garbage.
I think it might have been. John Arcudi told me that he was convinced that Alex Toth did not want to work on good scripts. Let me grab something real quick.
That would make a lot of sense if true.
Well, that's like Toth is like one of those guys where it's like he never. I know he does his. Oh, nice.
It's a Toth original.
It's beautiful.
Oh fuck yeah! I've seen the scan of that, but that's even more impressive seeing it like that.
And it's cool because it just looks like something he was doodling while on the phone.
Yeah. That's probably what it was doing.
He probably was. That's literally probably what he was doing.
The
also given to me by John Arcudi. I should thank him. I did a cover for Rumble, and he traded me a box of Alex Toth comics.
That's awesome.
And wow, that's incredible. That's immense right there.
Yeah. Arcudi is one of my favorite human beings on this planet, and one of the best writers in comics. I think.
Rumble was
I've sadly never met him, but I'm a big fan.
I feel like Rumble was a good book. I was that like who drew the first arc of that? Was that James Herron's Heron. Breakout?
Yeah, well, Heron I think broke out on BPRD because Arcudi really pushed to get him in, and then Rumble was their like creator-owned thing, and then I think David, I'm messing up. I'm going to mess up his last name. Another artist took over the second arc.
Yeah. I think I dropped off once Heron dropped off.
Heron's a tough act to follow. I would not want to.
Yeah, not fair to the next guy.
Yeah.
I've never met him, but he seems like such a nice dude. He's always very kind to me over Instagram and stuff like that. Like, yeah, I'm talking about Heron.
Yeah. Heron's fantastic. And just Ultra Mega is so good. Like I feel like he's one of those.
Yeah.
It's interesting because I do feel like there's a lot of comic books feel like it's kind of recovering from a dark age. I mean, it's my life, but comic books feels like it's recovering from a dark age in a lot of ways. And I feel like Heron's one of the, Heron and Daniel Warren Johnson and a lot of the guys are like these kind of guys that manage to be public mainstream doing really great work while comics was not in a good place. And so I feel like those guys are really necessary.
There's a thing, like, especially with Daniel, I like a lot of his stuff. He's super into wrestling and all this other stuff. So like that's all stuff that like isn't on my thing. But like his like reading Murder Falcon, I'm like, this dude bled on the page for his love of heavy metal and comics. And I'm like, I will forever love him for that, because like it doesn't matter what the fuck he does, because that book, like, I weirdly got teary at the end of it, and I'm like, why am I teary at the end of this damn book? But yeah, it's like, yeah, so it's good. It's good stuff.
Joe also loves Arcudi and says dude knows comics. The Vasic he's a good follow on Instagram, and I would guess that you guys might follow him. But he says he's watching the Corto Maltese, which I learned is how you pronounce it, animated series on the YouTube, and says they're
animated,
and they are. Yeah, there's
I had no idea.
And there's some like okay English dubs of it too. So like obviously like the Corto Maltese YouTube has them all in Italian, but you can I found English dubs on the YouTubes of it, so worth.
No, that's good to know that exists, because I had no idea.
Checking out.
That's one of those. Corto Maltese is one of those ones that, like, if you had introduced it to me in my teens or even my early 20s, I would have been like, "What the fuck is this bullshit?" Like, I just would not have gotten it, or Whereas in my mid to late 30s and now mid 40s, like, it's like, "Oh, I fucking get this now. Like, this is brilliant." Like, it's...
I still struggle with it. There's things I like a lot about his work, but it's like if you took because Tintin is too dry for most people, and I've sunk deep into Tintin. Like that is like one of my fundamental building blocks of my view on comics now. And Corto Maltese, I feel like I can look at Pratt's illustration and look at his life and kind of get more out of it than I haven't delved as deep.
Maybe that's where I'm coming from, is because like getting more into like the process of Corto Maltese is kind of what got me into Corto Maltese,
Yeah, and I know if Joe's watching us, like that's one of his favorite things ever. So he's probably like, "You idiots, just read the best stuff."
Well, I will say one of the issues with the prints that we've gotten in the U.S. of Corto is that every like European edition I've seen and bought has these just pages long like introductions, which I think contains a lot of I haven't bothered to sit with like a Google Translate pictures thing and read it, so I'm assuming that this is what it contains. But based on the pictures included with the articles, I think I'm kind of right, is that they have a lot of the context for the time period that the book was written about, and Pratt's own like experiences with that sort of time period, like that he's talking about. Like there's in the NBM printing of the Corto in Africa stories has a little bit of this, where Pratt's dad was in the Italian army and was stationed in Africa, and so it adds a lot of color to what you're about to read. And I feel like all the IDW, the IDW printings have none of that, and I feel like that kind of harms it a little bit.
It's like fascinating. Like, I think him and his mother were arrested at some point.
I have no idea.
Yeah, there's a lot of really interesting videos on Pratt, but because Italy was in a weird place when he was figuring out comics, and he was kind of going between Italy and Argentina, if I remember right, traveling a lot.
So yeah,
he's one of these guys that like he lived this like you hear about guys like Tezuka or whatever, where it's like he was at a desk all day, and Pratt, it's like he was smashing rum bottles over people's heads. He was like living life.
Yeah, which is cool. Like he's and I I think that adds to the mystique of the character and like all those stories is that because I like some of them are tough to read in some ways, but they're also very they do a really fantastic job of transporting you to a place that existed at a point in history.
Very much, yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
And like, yeah.
I was remembering another story about. I was alluding earlier about how I approach things very differently than I did when I was younger, and something that I remembered recently is when. I guess I don't know how I feel about this at this point, but I remember at one point someone was reprinting a Hugo Pratt book, and I didn't know the publisher at all, but I just emailed them, and I was like, "Your graphic design on this book is garbage."
Oh, is it the color one? Is that color edition?
Not that,
or is it the IDW ones? The IDW ones are bad.
It's one that has like a picture of it has like a not Pratt designed picture of a compass that's on the logo.
Yeah, those are the IDW ones. They're such garbage, and I hate it.
Right.
The print reproduction is bad. Like the quality of a lot of the pages, like of the of the actual printing isn't great. It's on these like glossy. I agree. It's the most frustrating edition, and that's the last English printing that we have of it.
Right, but I think the thing that drove me mad. So I have mixed feelings about it because first I'm like the hubris, the nerve of me emailing these people, and I was amazed that the public. I had enough comic clout at that point that the publisher actually put me in contact with the designer.
Well, I think the designer deserved it, honestly.
Sure, but the thing that drove me mad is they were cobbling together covers from interior panels, and Pratt did like hundreds of beautiful painted covers for these things.
Dude,
what the shit?
Yeah, I don't know what maybe they didn't have access. Because you could scan.
That sounds like somebody just didn't bother to ask.
Yeah, it's a strange thing because I both think that it was a dick move to email them, but also like it is maddening that somebody didn't have the respect for Pratt's work to not just use his work.
There are so many editions in Europe of like his work. This one I got in France at like the museum thing, and like the cover's nothing great, right. But like just the size of it is nice.
But just having it, yeah.
They also do some of these like watercolor editions, which I know some people have mixed feelings about, but I kind of like the color.
Sure.
But yeah, it has so many different printings, and at any time I travel, I always pick up like that's my like one thing that I just like if I go to a different country, just searching for a Cordo, and nice. You can find Cordo in almost any country other than America.
I mean,
that's something that I just don't
I found one on a newsstand in Greece on like some random. My wife and I for our honeymoon went to Greece and did like a thing on a boat, and we went to some little like there's like a fish small like fishing village place, and like there was like a convenience store, and they had a news like spinner rack, and they had Cordo Maltese like in Greek, and I was like, absolutely, this is I mean perfect, and so it's like the fact that we can't even get a decent NBM ones are good, but they're long out of print. So.
I remember because I used to work for NBM when I did adult comics in my 20s, and I remember at one point Pope was supposed to do covers for a monthly release of Hugo Pratt books.
They did release Ballad of the Salty Sea in like a monthly format, but they went with the like blown up, they pulled a panel for the cover.
Totally.
That's so weird.
Yeah, it's a I don't understand the why they would do that. That's a frustrating one. You were talking about Vivez earlier with France and stuff, and like he's such an interesting cartoonist because he seems to do very mainstreamish work, and then
Yeah.
very like
Got this one here too.
specific or very like personal type, or either horny or personal or both. And
Yes, and this is another one where I'm like, what can I show of this book?
like The Butchery is a really thoughtful, well done book. And then he did one that was like about growing up, like it was like a youth, like in a summer, you know, like a coming of age book that, you know, obviously has, you know, some sexual content in it, but I think it's, you know, very, it's a genre that you don't see of in, you know, like US comics.
Yeah, I think he's like, because I go through periods of where like I had a big falling out with manga for a while, where I just got really frustrated with a lot of the stuff that I was finding, because when I was a kid I was very much like the church of manga, like I was like, they're doing comics better over there than we're doing over here. And then past into the 90s, I felt like there was just like a real drop in work that connected to me, and a lot of it's like there's so many comics coming out over there that it's just the stuff I was seeing. And then Urasawa's work really brought me back into manga, and I feel like I similarly had a thing with European comics where I was frustrated, kind of like into the 90s. I felt like European comics or French comics, I should say, either went really cartoony, like Zepp, or like super kind of photorealistic, and neither of those were really connecting me with as much as the 70s stuff. And then I feel like there's guys like Frederick Peters and Vives that like really brought me back into seeing how cool the stuff in Europe was. Specifically, I remember Vives did hopefully I'm not butchering his name, but he did a series of pictures of Street Fighter characters doing casual things. And I remember there's one of like Chun-Li and Cammy sitting at a French cafe that was like one of the coolest drawings.
That's really funny.
The Vasic in the Nerdcrawler chat brought up the I gotta find it in here, but in Pulp Hope 2, where he has the Paul Pope has a conversation with Cordo.
Oh yeah, that was a cool one. I have files on my computer of things I've cobbled together from Paul's work, and my phone's getting close to dying here, so and it has a lot of the stuff that he put in this book that I had just crappy. I think there's one page in here that I think I scanned and sent him from an old flyer that I got.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's like a picture of Tarzan. Yeah, this is such a cool book.
It's a cool. I think I very much recommend it. I think it's
so you guys, we were talking about this the other day. Like, is it it's 2, but it's a reprint of the original one, just with more stuff?
I mean, I think it has all the stuff that was in the original one with a lot more stuff, and I would assume that it's been ordered and reorganized. So
yeah, I used to have the original one and I lost it somewhere along the way. So I wanted to get this one, but it's more enticing if it's the original one just with more, you know.
It seems like that's what it is.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's worth. If you're a fan, I think it's.
It's worth getting no matter what. I'm a stan. I'll get it, but yeah. No, it just makes it more enticing if I know I'm not missing out on the original volume that I lost by getting it.
I think it has everything that was in the original already, like in it. So it's not like
okay. That's a selling point for me. I don't know about anybody else, but that's a selling
Brandon,
point.
Is it this Tarzan here?
Yeah. And the version I have it is on bright pink paper, and he did like a live drawing in New York, so it was a live comic reading, which is really fun to go see. It was him and like Dean Haspel.
Really cool. You said it was him and Dean Haspel?
Yeah, it was a bunch of. I think I went with Tomer Hanukkah and Farrell Dalrymple back then. It was really cool.
Oh wow,
good guys.
Look at you being cool and being a rock star.
Well, it was really my time in New York. I probably talked about it a lot. Was really funny to me because I remember being really like slightly disappointed in New York and being like, "Where's the impressive art scene?" and I was hanging out with a bunch of art school students that like all I regard as like some of the best living artists I've ever met now. It's like, you know, guys like Farrell and James Jean and Tomer and Tom Herpick. And Becky was there. Sean Thomas, who went on to do a bunch of animated stuff. So it was really, yeah, so it was really
and Turtles comic back in the day.
Oh, yeah. I saw LaShawn when I was in LA last year. He's still at it, going over to Korea to animate his cartoons about being a Black American.
Frank corrected me. The Vivez coming of age book was called A Sister. So.
Oh yeah, that was a good one. Yeah, I hope France do better.
Don't repeat mistakes.
Yeah. Don't look at what. And I know I'm just relating it to America, but it is kind of. I do hope that, like, you know, things going against artistic freedom always seems like a really bad idea.
Yes, I think that's wholeheartedly agree.
That bold statement, like,
you're really going out on a limb there.
Yeah, don't try to shut down lines on paper, you fucking monsters.
Well, to belabor the point, and we can move on after this, but like, it's interesting that people still get scared about lines on paper. Like, that's even if it's digital lines on quote unquote paper, like, people still get scared. So
yeah, it's really fascinating. I mean, it makes drawings feel like magic.
Well, they kind of are.
Yeah. I mean, I think there is an interesting thing about kind of that you can have an idea and express it, or you know, create a false depth, even things like that. Yeah,
very much so.
And if you can draw a picture and get thrown in prison for it, it's a whole different thing. I manifested this nightmare.
Well, was it? Well, that is actually the strange death. Back to the strange death of Alex Raymond conversation.
Oh yeah, I meant to. Yeah.
Well, but that's funny because that's like he goes on this. Sim goes on this tangent in that book about how, like, I believe I'm correct, but where he's like, Alex Raymond is manifesting things within the strip, and he's manifesting them into his reality with his drawings, and when I was drawing House on Fire, I had originally had I had him get into this violent altercation, which it's in the book, and I was cutting it. I was going to cut it because I thought it was too, like, genre and, like, sort of forcing violence into the book, which I didn't know that it needed. And anyways, so I'm thinking about cutting it, and then I get jumped outside of my car, like you know, short, like a week or two afterwards, and I'm like, oh. Actually, no, I gotta keep it. I'll put it in. Like, I can't manifest anything now. Like, it's happened. I'm just gonna put the sequence in the book. Like,
yeah, it is really weird. I feel like every time I've kind of experienced violence in life, it really affects how I show it in the work.
Yeah,
like, it's always. I worked in a bar for a little while, and it's just like actual fights just suck. You know?
Yes.
Yeah. I was a bouncer at a bar for probably about 4 years in the mid 2000s, and it was a country bar. But it was a country bar on its regular nights, but it was also like there would be metal shows and all other stuff. So it hosted a host of things. It was always the country nights where fights happened, and that's not making a statement about anybody. But that's just like weirdly. And I remember the couple times where I had to be a part of, like, dragging someone outside and being like, thank God there's 3 other dudes my size here to help me, because I would not be able to handle this dude by myself. I would suck in
Yeah. I remember my job at the bar was to get the guys bigger than me.
Just go find him. Kevin
just
dropped.
And I'm like, I'm not as much of a stick figure as I would back then, but I was just like, I was like beanpole, so they weren't like having me throw people out.
Yeah. We just lost Kevin, I think. I think his phones and laptops died.
Oh yeah, and my phone's at 7%, so we'll see.
And it is 10:30 here, so I think that I think we're at a comfortable stopping point.
Cool.
But this was a blast.
Yeah, I like the idea of doing this regularly, and hopefully it was.
Regularly.
I don't know how it worked through.
I think it worked. Everything, the streams all were live, and well, we can debrief on things working afterwards. But yeah, I'm gonna wrap it up. Thank you to everyone who did join, and we'll hopefully do this again soon. So let me
totally. And I actually drew my normal speed I draw, where normally I kind of panic draw when it's filming, and this was like as slow as I normally draw.
Thanks everyone for. I just stopped the stream.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah. Yeah, this was great. I had a lot of fun, and I don't know that we sold anything, but I think it's good for just